What is going on? It is Nate the Game Guy coming back with another video. Today I figure I'd talk about a relatively interesting video topic, and that is Xbox 360 games and original Xbox games that are not backwards compatible on the Series X. But they should be, right? For whatever reason, these games just did not make it onto the backwards compatibility list. Whether it might just be licensing issues or the fact that Microsoft Net is no longer adding original Xbox games to the backwards compatibility list, doesn't matter. The point is, these games are really fun, they're great games, they should be played, but you just cannot play them on a Series X. Now, since I am a game collector and obviously I do have a relatively big 360 collection along with a decent sized original Xbox collection, I do own multiple 360 consoles. I do own an original Xbox as well. But, it would be nice for some convenience to, just pop the game into the Series X and just boom, just start playing, right? So without further ado, let's take a look. Alright, so before I jump into that list, I just want to throw in a quick disclaimer first. These are all games that I have played at some point or another sometime in my life. I'm not including any games that I have not played at all because I want to be able to have first-hand experience when recommending these games. Please bear in mind that some of these games, it's been a very long time since I have played these, so there are probably going to be some key details that I am forgetting, so just keep that in mind. So now with that disclaimer out of the way, let's jump into that list. So the first game I want to talk about on the list is Mech Assault. When this game first came out, I was absolutely in love with this title, right? With the big solid mechs that you could choose, the gameplay, the overall concept. This was literally a top tier title in my opinion when it came to the original Xbox's library. Unfortunately, this title never made it to the backwards compatibility list on the Series X. And unfortunately, you just don't get games like this anymore. In my opinion, mech-based games are heavily underrepresented, and it's just really unfortunate that you just rarely see games involving mechs like Mech Assault. For those that have never played Mech Assault, essentially what it is, you grab different mechs based on your preference, and essentially you just go out and you fight different mechs online, or you just go through the campaign and just do your stuff, right? Great game. I highly recommend it. It's a game that you can definitely pick up for relatively cheap. Granted, you will need an original Xbox to play it, but overall, it's a solid title that is just such a sad and unfortunate thing that it just never made it to the backwards compatibility list on the Series X. Another fantastic title that unfortunately never made it onto the list of backwards compatible games on the Series X is Need for Speed Most Wanted, specifically the one that came out in 2005. Now, it is true that none of the Need for Speed games are backwards compatible, but I think I speak for a large audience when I say that Most Wanted from 2005, out of all the Need for Speed games, that one definitely should have been on the backwards compatibility list. This game literally came out during what I would consider the golden era of Need for Speed titles. In my opinion, it's just really unfortunate that there just aren't any Need for Speed titles that are able to captivate the type of quality and the type of experience that you would get from these games like almost 20 years ago, right? These games were really top tier racing titles. For those that have never played Most Wanted from 2005, essentially what it is street racing. You get drag racing, you've got like your basic lap races where you go around like 3 laps or whatever, right? You run from the cops. There's different traps that you can go throughout the city to get the cops to like crash. There's places for you to hide to help evade from the cops. You can also upgrade your car to make your car's performance better. It was just an overall just such a phenomenal title. Because it's such a phenomenal title, this game you can literally find online used after all these years for about $60 complete in box the last time I checked, if you buy the 360 version, which in my opinion is the way to play Most Wanted, is on the 360. So if for whatever reason you're dying to play this game, and unfortunately it is not on the backwards compatibility list for the Series X, but for whatever reason you still have your 360, this is definitely a game I would definitely recommend that you check out. Another fantastic racing title that is definitely worth mentioning when talking about backwards compatible games that just never made it onto the Series X is Forza Motorsport 4. This game, in my opinion, and I'm actually very thankful to see that most of the Forza community actually agrees with me on this take, but Forza Motorsport 4, in my opinion, is the best Forza game in the series, and it's really unfortunate that you actually cannot play it on the Series X through its backwards compatibility list. Forza Motorsport 4 was, in my opinion, one of the best racers that I've ever played, ever, hands down. If I ever did a top 10 list of best racing games of all time, Forza 4 would definitely be on that list. Now, it is true, just like Need for Speed, that none of the Forza games are backwards compatible, which is really unfortunate, is because I actually am a big fan of a lot of the previous titles of the Forza games. Granted, I don't think any of the new Forza games are bad, but I will say that I feel that I would prefer to play Forza 4 than some of the other Forza games that have come out over the years, right? It's just such a great title. What I like about it so much is I love the soundtrack. I love its concept. I love its big list of cars that you get to choose from. And yes, I even enjoy the fact that you can actually choose to drive a Toyota Prius. More on that in a moment. And I love the fact that, they did a lot of things right? It's just an overall just a phenomenal game. Yes, I would obviously hear from other people like, oh, why do you have like a Prius you can drive or a smart car and you can drive in that game? That's so stupid. Who wants to drive that, right? I actually like it, is because to me, I like the fact that in the game, it felt like it was trying to give the perspective of cars of all different kinds, of no matter whether you like the crazy exotics or just like, smart cars, right? To me, it just felt like literally it was trying to show you, right? Like it was really trying to aim for like that realism. Sure, there are elements that aren't super realistic, right? How you can literally make your Prius upgraded to like a level S car with like all these crazy like modifications or whatever, right? But I will say the experience was just overall such a very fun experience. And in my opinion, it's just really unfortunate that this is another title that just did not make it onto the list. Alright, so this game is definitely worth mentioning on my list in my opinion, and that is Army of Two: The Devil's Cartel. This game, in my opinion, is literally take the gameplay of Gears of War and give it the physics of Bad Company 2 and some of the other Battlefield games, put them together, and that is Army of Two: The Devil's Cartel. It is such a fun game. Literally, when you would get two people, including yourself, right, to do co-op, and literally you're just going in and you're just like going nuts on like the enemy, just like taking cover and firing and watching like all the rubble like break down and all that, right? It was such a great title. Now, granted, this is the only Army of Two game that I've personally have ever played, so I can't speak on the other Army of Two games, but what I can say, The Devil's Cartel was a phenomenal game. It's just really unfortunate that, like I said, this game did not make it onto the backwards compatibility list. From what I've seen online, this is a game that you can probably pick up complete in box for about $10. So if you happen to have a 360 laying around and you want to play it, it's definitely worth checking out. Knowing EA, it's probably safe to assume that the servers have shut down, so if you were to play it, you probably would have to do like couch co-op with it, but it's still fun playing nevertheless. So it is a game that I would definitely recommend that you check out. Great gameplay, great concept. It was just overall a great game. So moving on down the list is the game Eternal Sonata. Now this game, in my opinion, is a very creative and a very unique JRPG. Once was a 360 exclusive before it would get a release onto the PS3 the next year. Eternal Sonata was just an overall great JRPG. Basically, the game is themed off of the music composer Frédéric Chopin, and it's a pretty unique JRPG where it's kind of themed off of his music, even though the game does have its own original soundtrack. And overall, the game is very themed off of classical music in general, right? Very creative game. It's very colorful. I love its art style, love its story. And even though I will admit the game tends to be pretty linear with the fact that you're constantly moving forward, unfortunately, it doesn't give you the option to trace backwards to previous places that you've already been before. But I can look over that because overall it's a pretty unique game that's pretty fun. Enjoy its story. It is also a bit of a mishmash between an action RPG and a traditional turn-based RPG, so do keep that in mind. Overall, very fun game, very great concept, unique story. Another game that unfortunately did not make it to the backwards compatibility list, sadly. Now, this game is just a tragedy, in my opinion, that this game did not make it onto the backwards compatibility list, and that is Transformers War for Cybertron. If you are a big Transformers fan, you love G1, you love the Transformers universe, this is a game that is a must play and a must have. Basically, this game literally takes place on Cybertron right before the events of G1 of the first episode, when Optimus Prime, the Autobots, and the Decepticons had to leave Cybertron. And this game actually explains some of the backstory to some of the Transformers, right? It's a very unique game that is a very great story. Its multiplayer is themed off of Call of Duty. It even has a mode that's also themed off of Nazi zombies, where you, instead of fighting zombies, you're fighting Decepticons, which was also pretty fun in its day. In my opinion, did have success enough to spawn another sequel. Unfortunately, I still feel that this game really went under the radar when it really shouldn't have been, because it's just overall a great game. I believe anyone who's a die-hard Transformers fan needs to play this game. Now, this game is definitely the final game on the list when it comes to racers, and that is Midnight Club Los Angeles. Now, this game was unfortunately the last game that was made in the Midnight Club series before Rockstar, just for whatever reason, decided to abandon the entire series. This game was released originally back in 2008, and it was a very fun game where it's all about street racing in LA. Rockstar did an incredible job at recaptivating what LA looks like in the game. You have this big selection of like different cars for you to choose from. You can modify your cars with different upgrades. You can even put hydraulics on your cars to make your cars like lowriders. It's a very cool game. Now, unfortunately, even if you get this game on the 360, the servers have shut down quite a while ago, but it is overall worth checking out anyways because of its pretty awesome single player. It's overall a really great game. Another one that is unfortunately never made it to the backwards compatibility list, but it is a game definitely worth checking out. Being the only music-themed entry on the list is Guitar Hero 3. Now, in my opinion, all the Guitar Hero games should be backwards compatible, but the only reason I'm limiting it down to Guitar Hero 3 for this video is this is the game that I happen to have the most experience with in the entire Guitar Hero series. Now, I do hear the argument a lot that the Guitar Hero games are not backwards compatible, not just because of licensing issues, but also because of the Guitar Hero controller, that it is not compatible with the Series X. Now, I have looked online and I have seen that Guitar Hero Live is compatible with the Series X. Now, I don't know if the controller from Live is actually compatible with the Series X or not, but if it is compatible with the Series X, I think even if there weren't any licensing issues, you should absolutely have been able to play all the Guitar Hero games on the Series X. Being the only fighting game on the list is Kung Fu Chaos. Now, this game was a pretty unique game when it first came out on the original Xbox, right? Now, this game was literally like a party fighting game where it was like you get like all of your fighters, right? And you just would go in and just start beating each other up. Right? It kind of reminds me a little bit of Power Stone off of the Dreamcast a little bit, right? Granted, it does have its own differences separating it from Power Stone and games that are similar to that type, right? It was a very fun game that, you know, if you had like 4 people over, you just go in and just start beating each other up through all like the different stages and all that, right? Very fun game. Unfortunately, being another fun game off of the backwards compatibility list that just didn't make it, getting close to being at the end of the list is Hitman HD Trilogy. Now, this game is a compilation title that originally released with 2 discs for the game, right? Where it had Hitman Blood Money on one disc, and it had Hitman 2, Silent Assassin, and Hitman Contracts on the second disc, right? Now, interestingly, with this game, Hitman Blood Money is backwards compatible, right? And this game was actually released on the 360 before the HD Trilogy came out, right? So, while it is nice that you can actually play Hitman Blood Money on the Series X, unfortunately for Hitman 2 and Hitman Contracts, those games you actually cannot play through the backwards compatibility list on the Series X, which is unfortunate, right? Because I am actually a really big fan of the Hitman franchise, right? I love the Hitman franchise. I've had a lot of great memories with it. I've had a lot of fun with it. And while I am very appreciative that I can play Blood Money on my Series X, I just wish it would have been complete, that I would have been able to play those 2 extra games on my Series X. And finally, reaching to the end of the list is The Dishwasher, being the only game off of the Xbox Marketplace from way back in the day on the 360. The Dishwasher was a very unique title, right? Unfortunately, I'm unable to remember the story much, but what I can tell you is I do remember a lot of its gameplay, and I do have to say this was a pretty fun title, right? Its art style was very unique too, right? Where basically you go in and you just start hacking and slashing all kinds of like different enemies and all that, right? And this game was also kind of like a little bit of a platformer too, which I have to say the Dishwasher was a very unique title when it first came out back in its day. A lot of great Xbox Live arcade games did make it to the backwards compatibility list for the Series X. It's just really unfortunate that this one happened to be the ones that didn't make it onto that list. All right, and that concludes my list of backwards compatible games that should be on the list but are not on the list for the Series X backwards compatibility list. What did you guys think of my list? Or there were games that you agree with, disagree with? Which games do you think should have been on the list that I just simply haven't played that you think should be on the backwards compatibility list? Please be sure to comment in the comment section down below. Please be sure to give this video a like. Helps boost it in the YouTube algorithm, helps a potential audience find videos just like this much easier, and please be sure to subscribe for more content just like this when it comes to game related subjects and game collecting. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.